Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the video that you have all been waiting for. It is the announcement of my TEW 2020 series, and as voted on by the fans, we are going to be doing All Elite Wrestling from the very first episode of Dynamite. So as I had previously mentioned, I do have some issues with the way Dynamite has gone. I was incredibly hopeful when AEW launched. After the first couple of pay-per-views, I was hopeful, but a little bit worried because of some of the things that I had seen. And now here we are, a year later. I don't want to say it, but all but given up on All Elite Wrestling. They've done a lot of things that have really turned me off of the product and really kind of don't have me rooting for their success anymore. They were granted this grand opportunity, and in my opinion, they've kind of fumbled it. So I wanted to make a quick episode 0 for you guys before we get into the actual series to just go over some of the things that I would like to air quotes fix here in my alternate booking of Dynamite. So we get into those, and the very first one is the bloated roster of All Elite Wrestling. You know, they have upwards of I think 120 wrestlers that they've used on between Dynamite and Dark, and that's just insane. There's not enough television time for everyone, and so this is really my first point, is you go weeks between key appearances for people in major storylines. You will go weeks without seeing someone on your television that's involved in a major storyline, and that is a huge problem in a wrestling company. That's absolutely ludicrous. That's not something that should be happening. If there's a major hot storyline, it should be something that you're pushing every single week, and the bloated roster is part of that, is because they're trying to push, 10, 12, 15 different storylines at once. You don't have time for all this. You have 3 hours of weekly content, and that's just not enough time to accomplish all the things that they're trying to accomplish. And then my second point of order is reducing the amount of comedy in All Elite Wrestling. So comedy can be done in wrestling, and it can be done well, but I feel like it is very much overdone in AEW. And one of the biggest examples is Orange Cassidy. Now, I will preface this by saying I do enjoy Orange Cassidy. I will sit down and watch Orange Cassidy in AEW and thoroughly enjoy myself, and then afterwards go, wow, that was really fucking stupid, and that made AEW look bad. That this, as they refer to him, the sloth of AEW can have competitive matches with these guys. And I get that, he turns it on when he needs to turn it on, but, you're a professional wrestler. You should have it turned on all the time. It's kind of shitting on the business for me. And beyond that, the Dark Order. I have never enjoyed the Dark Order. I think the Dark Order have been shit from the first episode of Dynamite. And other people may view that differently, but that's my own personal opinion, is the Dark Order are a very bad comedy act that is being presented seriously. And then beyond that, we're pushing all these comedy acts that we don't have time for, and we're not pushing guys like the Lucha Brothers, other fantastic stars. And beyond that, even further beyond that, they have bungled the debut of many guys who could have been huge stars. Lance Archer and Brian Cage have basically the same trajectory, where they were these big guys. They should both be mega stars in AEW right now, but they're glorified mid-carders because they came in, immediately challenged for a title, and were buried in their title match. Lance Archer had a 20-minute match with Cody Rhodes where he beats the shit out of him and then loses. It made him look like an absolute chunk. You're undestroyable. You're monster, 4-0, just destroying people left and right. Loses in his first big match. Which is the same thing that happened with Brian Cage. Except Brian Cage's match was even less competitive than that match. It was more competitive than that match. That's what I meant to say. And arguably, Brian Cage's match should have been less competitive. The man is a beast. And they have bungled both of those debuts, as well as handling the stars of the Lucha Brothers. And we could say Pac, but I do understand that Pac has been, stuck in the UK throughout the pandemic, so I will give them a pass on that one. But they have so much potential on this roster that is going to waste while they're pushing other stars who should not be pushed, in my opinion. And beyond that, pushing stars that shouldn't be pushed, we have the women's division of AEW, which has been probably one of the worst things about it. All it took was 2 major injuries to really reveal how paper-thin the women's division is in AEW. You had Britt Baker and Chris Statlander essentially carrying the division this entire time. Riho was a terrible choice, in my opinion, for the first champion. She is just a tiny little girl who lost to the one they were presenting as the Beast Nyla Rose. This is another example, like we talked about with Cage and Archer. You have the Beast, they are presenting this unstoppable monster, yet their first big match, you have them lose. In a match they should have dominated, they lose. They constantly do this. They bungle these people who should be huge stars because they want the underdog to come out on top. They don't want the Beast to have a huge reign. It's stupid. It's fucking stupid. Nyla Rose should have been the champion for a while, should not have lost to Riho. But beyond that, as I was saying, I keep saying beyond that, I'm sorry. You know, the division is paper thin. You had Chris Statlander, Britt Baker, and Hikaru Shida are your only 3 good wrestlers. Nyla Rose can be a good wrestler. She can be a good Beast character if she's in there with someone who can work well, who can work and play off of her strengths. And they don't have that on this roster. A lot of the people on their roster are not good wrestlers in the women's division. And beyond that, just titles in general. You know, there have been in 1 year, 4 women's champions? 3 women's champions. You had Riho, Nyla Rose, and Hikaru Shida. In 1 year, the very first year. The first year of the title is when you're supposed to be developing the legitimacy of the title, not hot potatoing it around because you can't decide what you want to do with your division. And that is exactly the problem I had with Chris Jericho losing the title, is because Chris Jericho was the fantastic choice to have the title to start AEW. That made so much sense to have him beat Hangman Page, and it makes obvious sense to have him then lose it to Jon Moxley. That's the natural progression. But Chris Jericho, and I don't think I'm out of line saying this, had a very forgettable AEW championship run. He had 2 great title matches. That was with Jon Moxley and Cody Rhodes. Outside of that, his title reign was very forgettable. He had matches with the likes of Scorpio Sky, Jungle Boy. There's probably one that I'm forgetting, but that's all that comes to mind. And nothing really blew you away. It was a very forgettable title reign, and that's not what you want for your first champion. It's arguable that he's done even better without the championship, and that's not what you want. You want to put your title on the map. You want to establish prestige, and they failed to do that with the AEW title, and they've done an even worse job with Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley has had 1 good match for the title. He had a good match with Chris Jericho, and that was it. The match with Brody Lee was pretty bad, in my opinion. The match with Brian Cage was also very forgettable. I think he had a title match with Darby Allin, I want to say. I don't even remember. He has had an even more forgettable match, and he's had the title for even longer than Chris Jericho has. It's an embarrassment. The title has no prestige. It means nothing. And I want to make it mean something. But then, to make the title mean even less, they introduced a secondary title within a year. So not only does this first title not have prestige, but now you're introducing a second title that has even less prestige. And don't even get me started, back to the Lance Archer and Cody thing. That made it bad, but then Cody is having competitive matches with anyone they can pick up off the backyard circuit, like Warhorse, and, he's having these competitive matches with those guys. And what does that say about Lance Archer even? That Lance Archer couldn't beat this guy, but Cody has to struggle and go 20 minutes to beat Warhorse. What does that say about Lance Archer? What does that say about Scorpio Sky, who also couldn't beat him? It sucks. And then, obviously, it makes it look good when Brody Lee comes in and dominates Cody, but it would have made it look better if he was facing better competition, competent wrestlers. Geez, that's something they have completely bungled. And one of the other big things that they have completely bungled is the Elite. Cody is the only one from the Elite that's really gotten any sort of substantial push. You could make an argument for Kenny Omega and Hangman Page since they have the tag team title run, but, that's another one that's been somewhat forgettable. If it weren't for the storyline, that would be a completely forgettable reign. People like to argue that they had a great match with the Young Bucks. I would disagree. But even look at this. This is from the second episode of AEW Dynamite, and 4 of the 6 stars you have promoted are from the Elite. But, none of them have had a title reign, save Cody and the TNT title for 6 or 7 weeks. That's it. They've really failed to capitalize on it. They've had the Elite on every single episode, but they haven't had them in a real, position where they can promote them a lot. They're doing stupid shit like the Stadium Stampede or matches with each other or, completely irrelevant title flip-flopping where the wrong team won the tag team titles. It should have been the Young Bucks from the outset, and I get that they don't want to overly push themselves because then they look like, oh, we are executive vice presidents and we're choosing to push ourselves, but in reality, that's what they should have done. You're the biggest stars in the company, and you're failing to use yourselves because you don't want to look like you're overusing yourself. And then the last point that I have for things that I can fix is being the elite. I hate that it seems like being the elite is something you have to watch in order to be able to keep up with Dynamite. Being in the Elite and Dark, you miss so much if you don't watch those, and they will make references to those on Dynamite, and I don't feel like you should have to go out of your way to watch their fucking dumbass YouTube series if you want to keep up with their wrestling show on syndicated cable. That's not something you should have to do, and I think that's another drawback to their product. And those are the things that I can fix. Don't get me started on the things that I can't fix, like the quality of their matches, the poor psychology, and the awful storytelling. So, hopefully, you guys understand the points that I make and kind of see what I want to change about AEW Dynamite. Hopefully, you guys will enjoy what I do with it. And so, I want to thank you guys for watching. The first episode should be dropping tomorrow or the day after. And I will see you guys in that video.